When a relationship the world believed in falls apart, it doesn't just feel like gossip, it feels like loss. And when that relationship belongs to Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman, the shock hits even harder. For nearly 2 decades, they were held up as proof that love could survive fame, addiction, distance, and relentless public pressure. Then suddenly, it was over. And when Keith finally spoke, the truth he shared was raw, unsettling, and impossible to ignore. This wasn't a polished Hollywood breakup. It was messy, human, and painfully honest.
Can I ask you, speaking of your amazing love story with Nicole, you met at G'day Australia. Is that what it was called?
G'day LA.
G'day LA.
Yeah.
If you hadn't both been there that day, would your paths somewhere have inevitably crossed? Or maybe this incredible
probably.
life story wouldn't have happened?
No, I think it would.
Yeah? Are you a believer in fate, or do you think as 2 Australians it would have happened?
No idea.
When the fairy tale cracked. Breakups are never easy, but there's something uniquely jarring when a couple that seemed unbreakable calls it quits. Keith and Nicole weren't just married, they were symbolic. A movie star and a country singer from 2 different worlds who somehow made it work. Or at least, that's what it looked like from the outside. So when Nicole officially filed for divorce after 19 years of marriage, fans were stunned. Questions flooded in immediately. What happened? How could this fall apart? Who would walk away from the Nicole Kidman? But the real shock didn't come from court documents. It came from Keith himself. Long before the paperwork became public, Keith made a quiet but devastating confession. He admitted that he had blown the marriage. No spin, no legal language, no shared responsibility phrasing, just a blunt admission that cut through years of carefully curated public image. It wasn't the kind of statement people expect from celebrities, and that's exactly why it landed so hard.
I just often think that if you weren't at that event, maybe you don't have the same friendship group, it may never have happened.
Well,
Never know.
You never know.
it's fate. It's the universe.
Anyway,
Keith's confession, no filters, no excuses. When Keith said he had blown it to smithereens, it didn't sound like damage control. It sounded like a man who had been carrying the weight of that truth for a long time and finally let it out. There was no attempt to redirect blame. He didn't hide behind vague differences or scheduling conflicts. He didn't point fingers at fame, pressure, or the media. He owned it. For years, Keith and Nicole were celebrated as an example of a marriage that survived real storms, especially his very public struggles with addiction early in their relationship. Nicole stood by him during rehab, career uncertainty, and moments that could have broken a less committed partner. Hearing Keith now admit that he failed the marriage made everything feel different in hindsight. Suddenly, past moments took on new meaning.
It's a big, epic, romantic drama.
now tell them about the movie.
Looking back, the signs we missed. In 2024, Keith appeared emotional while honoring Nicole at an AFI tribute. He thanked her for rescuing him during his darkest periods. At the time, audiences saw it as romantic, a husband publicly acknowledging his wife's support. But after the split, that moment feels heavier. Was it gratitude or guilt? Was he already aware that he had leaned too heavily on her? That she had carried more than her share of the emotional load? When you look back through that lens, the tribute doesn't just feel loving. It feels like an admission. What surprised people most wasn't just what Keith said, but how he said it. There was no press release drafted by publicists, no carefully timed exclusive. It was just him, speaking plainly, like someone who couldn't pretend anymore. And the timing made it sting even more. By the time his words surfaced, the divorce papers were already filed.
I was trying to play it cool, but inside I felt like I'd snuck into the royal ball, simply because Nick had such a truly otherworldly aura about her, and I felt a bit like I was meeting a real-life princess. I know a lot of you can relate to that.
Public reaction, respect, anger, and heartbreak. The reaction was immediate and intense. Some praised Keith for taking responsibility. In an era where celebrity breakups are often reduced to blame games and vague statements, his honesty felt refreshing, even brave. Others weren't so forgiving. They felt it was too little, too late. That admitting fault after the marriage was already over didn't undo the damage. And then there were the fans who were simply heartbroken. If Keith and Nicole couldn't make it work after everything they survived together, what did that say about the idea of lasting love in Hollywood? For Nicole, the confession likely didn't reveal anything new. Reports suggest she fought hard to keep the marriage together, especially for their daughters. She protected the family image, stood by Keith through difficult chapters, and prioritized stability. Hearing him admit publicly that he had blown it may not have shocked her, but it made the reality impossible to ignore. Sometimes the hardest part of a breakup isn't accepting that it's over, it's hearing the reason spoken out loud.
You don't know, just celebrate the meeting.
Well, we celebrate the meeting, I hope every day.
Well, you know, have met each other. We always say that.
The rumors begin. Was there someone else? As with any high-profile divorce, speculation followed fast. Almost immediately, whispers began about a possible other woman. Whether fair or not, the internet did what it always does. Searched for clues, moments, and names to connect the dots. One name kept resurfacing. Maggie Baugh, Keith's young guitarist. Fans pointed to on-stage interactions, lyric changes during performances, and viral clips that felt a little too familiar. At one concert, Keith even replaced lyrics with her name, sending social media into overdrive. Memes spread, TikToks exploded, insider stories appeared overnight. Even a comment from Maggie's father, one that stopped short of denial, added fuel to the fire. But here's the truth. Nothing has been confirmed. Keith hasn't addressed the rumors. Maggie hasn't spoken publicly, and Nicole has remained completely silent. And silence, as always, leaves room for imagination. The timeline that raised eyebrows. What made the rumors harder to dismiss was the timeline. Nicole officially filed for divorce on September 30th, marking their separation after 19 years. The filing cited irreconcilable differences and ongoing marital issues. But sources close to the couple suggested they had been living separate lives long before that date. Keith had reportedly set up his own place quietly. Friends described the split as inevitable. By the time the legal process became public, the emotional separation had already happened. That's where the rumors cut deepest. For someone like Nicole, who stood by Keith through addiction, instability, and rebuilding, any suggestion of betrayal would feel devastating. Fans couldn't help but connect the dots. The confession, the filing, the rumors, the timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But Keith's words suddenly carried more weight. They sounded less like abstract regret and more like accountability for something concrete. Still, it's important to zoom out.
Women, or even, it doesn't even have to be that, but that puts people in a place where they can speak their truth and be their authentic self is very important, and I'm happy to support it.
Sometimes the other woman isn't a person. One of the most overlooked aspects of celebrity breakups is this. The other woman doesn't always mean another human being. Sometimes it's a career, sometimes it's fame, sometimes it's unresolved demons that never fully disappear. In Keith's case, his relentless tour schedule, the pressure of performance, and a lifelong battle with addiction could all fit that role. Even years into sobriety, those struggles don't simply vanish. They require constant attention, discipline, and emotional energy. That energy has to come from somewhere. And when it comes at the expense of a relationship, the damage can be just as real as infidelity.
Totally.
In the industry, financial sacrifices, physical sacrifices,
Relationship sacrifices,
Yes.
Everything.
Rewinding to the beginning, a love everyone rooted for. Before the heartbreak, there was genuine romance. They met in 2005 at an event celebrating Australians in Los Angeles. Nicole, newly single after her divorce from Tom Cruise, was rebuilding her sense of self. Keith was already successful, but still carried a quiet, self-effacing charm. Nicole fell fast. Keith waited. He famously held onto her phone number for months, too shy to call. When he finally did, their conversations were deep, emotional, and intense. Not Hollywood small talk, real connection. They married in Sydney in 2006. Nicole wore Balenciaga. Keith sang to her. Fans melted. More importantly, it felt real. Nicole described Keith as grounding, safe, and healing. Keith called Nicole his savior. She intervened early in their relationship, pushing him into rehab, a move he later credited with saving his life. They built a family, 2 daughters, a sense of home amid chaos. For a long time, they were proof that love could survive anything.
I just want to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And that is naturally going to be different every night.
The next chapter, Life After Us. The papers may be signed, but the story doesn't end here. Nicole is centering her life around her daughters, prioritizing calm and consistency. Keith, financially secure and still creatively active, will likely process this chapter through music, as he always has. They're both committed to co-parenting quietly, away from the spotlight, and maybe that's the most honest ending possible. Final reflection. Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's story reminds us of something uncomfortable but real. Even love built on sincerity, sacrifice, and years of shared history can fall apart. Not because it was fake, but because life is complicated. If you want more deep dives into the real stories behind Hollywood headlines, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for what's next.